Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
So we're here with Sarah Doran, and we're here to talk about her book, The Peppered Sky. We're so excited to have it on Make Mementos. Could you just maybe give me a little summary of your book and just why you decided to write it?
Yeah, The Peppered Sky is truly a story that came from my heart and my own memories. I grew up a military kid, and one of my favorite things to do with my family was to go out and watch my dad in his training jumps with the airborne units that he was a part of. And so The Peppered Sky follows two military kids who go out to the drop zone with their mom, and they get to watch daddy jump out of an airplane. So it's really a story that comes from the heart and my own memories, and such a cool experience that I just wanted to be able to share with my little readers.
Well, that's amazing. And how did you come up with the two characters? Are they based on anyone, like your own, anyone in your life, or?
I mean, they could be based off of me and my younger brother. There were four of us growing up, and so it's not completely identical to my family. However, I would definitely say myself and my little brother are kind of personified through those characters, although I did change the names. So.
And tell me a little bit about so you mentioned your childhood growing up, you were a military child, and then before you became a writer, what was your professional career?
Yes. So, I never imagined that I would join the Army, but I did when I was 21. I actually had my 22nd birthday at basic training, which was very unique. I joined the Army as a Black Hawk helicopter mechanic and crew chief, which just means that I got to fix Black Hawk helicopters when parts went bad. We did a lot of regular upkeep and maintenance on the helicopters, and I also got to be a crew chief, which is very similar to like a military flight attendant. We would help get passengers on and off the aircraft safely. We would also help load cargo and things like that. So we would fly with the helicopters and man the big gun on the side.
So what was your experience like as a female service member, and what would you kind of advice would you give to girls that are interested in that as a career field for themselves?
Honestly, working in the military definitely had its challenges. I won't sugarcoat that at all. Especially aviation it's very male dominated, and so you have to kind of go in with some thick skin and knowing that you're going to be facing challenges. However, I would encourage anybody interested in aviation to go for it. It's something that I truly did love, and am so proud of the service that I had, and the experiences that I gained and the knowledge in working in aviation. It's something I miss today immensely, but I'm so thankful I get to kind of relive those experiences through these stories.
Mhm.
I would say go for it. It's something that I don't think anybody will regret.
So then how did you make the transition and that as your background and okay, I'm gonna go write these children's books. Like how did that come about?
It was not something even on my radar when I got out of the service. I was a new mom when I got out of the service. I finished my 6 years, and then a few months later, I had my first son. And so I kind of lived in this motherhood bliss for a while. I went to school. I had gone to school prior to getting out of the service, and had bounced around several different ideas about, what I wanted to do with my life at that point. And I kind of settled in on being a teacher. Um, and so when I was going to school to be a teacher, I had to do this assignment for my children's literature course. Um, and I chose military kids books for my project. And I was kind of shocked by the lack of resources available. And I mean, I looked back on my own upbringing and realized I didn't have stories like this growing
Mhm.
up. And so that kind of like was the seed that was planted back then. Fast forward to 2019, 2020, I started dabbling in writing children's stories. And the first ones were not military kids books. They were actually not great at all. They were more fably and had animal characters. And I realized after talking to a friend that I needed to kind of find what I was passionate about and write what I know. And so when I finally started realizing, okay, there's this huge lack of representation for military kids and families in literature, and I love to write, I have these experiences that I can write about. And so when it finally clicked, The Peppered Sky was my first story. Sleeping Giants was written within a couple of months after finishing Peppered Sky. And I've got several other books, one that's already finished, my third is finished. And then I've got several others in progress. So I just feel like I finally found my niche, my passion, and kind of my calling as a writer.
And now you have illustrators that the drawing in Peppered Sky are beautiful. And how did you connect with an illustrator? How did you find like the independent publishing process and working through all of those challenges as well?
Yeah, so I didn't intend to self-publish my books
Mhm.
initially. I thought, well, typically writers go through this traditional publishing process, which involves a lot of time and waiting and submitting to agents who then may or may not pick you up, to then potentially pass you on to a publisher who then may or may not pick
Mhm.
up your book to publish. And so I went through about a year of submitting to agents with big publishing houses or agencies who partner with big publishing houses. And the resounding feedback I was getting from my stories is this is great, but the market's not big enough for this. These stories aren't important enough to publish.
Mhm.
I think they weren't as profitable as some of the more universal themes like kindness and sharing. That didn't deter me, though. I was very determined that these are important stories and
Mhm.
that there's this huge market that's untapped that needs to be met. And so I started researching what my other options were, and self-publishing was absolutely an option. And I felt like I would have control over the process to ensure that the authenticity and the quality were at
Mhm.
the standards that I wanted them to be.
Mhm.
So fast forward, I was able to connect with Beth Snyder, the illustrator for Peppered Sky, through some mutual acquaintances. And when I saw her art, I asked, do you have any connection to the military? Because this is important to me. I want
Mhm.
this to be a resounding theme with the creatives behind the book. And her father and grandfather had also served in the military. And so um, after working out all of the details, I ran a Kickstarter for that book to
Mhm.
help with the upfront costs, because when you self-publish, you're funding everything. I mean, you're funding the illustrations, the printing, the design, everything that goes into that story has to be paid up front. And that is a lot of money that I had no idea was involved in all of this when I
Mhm.
sat down to write a story. So it's been a huge learning curve. Definitely worth it, because I feel like what we've created with the Peppered Sky is so worthwhile, and it has touched so many lives already. And I just think that we're in the very beginning of that still, even though it's been just over a year since we launched the book. So to circle back around, that is why I chose self-publishing, and I really couldn't be happier with how things have turned out.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge going that route, but like you
Yeah.
said, you have more control of the book. So just kind of going back to the book and the lack of military children's book in the market, what do you hope that when a military child and parent pick up your book, what do you hope that they get from your story? Like what are you hoping that they feel from it?
So I was brought up with certain values. I would say that the value of country and service was huge in my upbringing. So was freedom and faith, and a lot of these same elements I wanted to instill into my readers. And so I know that we all come from very different upbringings and backgrounds, but we can all be united under this nation that we are serving and living in together. And so whether you're a military family or not a military family, this is a story that can help promote and foster in children this sense of patriotism and family and freedom, as well as faith. And so that's really what I want to leave with my readers, is that sense of pride in our nation, pride in our service members and their families.
Yeah. And that was gonna be my next question. Like, it's not just for military families, like other children, what do they get from it? But then seeing the representation of a military family if you would have had this book as a child, how would that have made you feel to see like your family represented in a story?
I mean, I would have been so proud of
Hmm.
realizing A, that like not everybody's family was like mine. I mean,
Yeah,
we're like the 1%, right?
right,
And so, but as a child, you think, oh, everybody's like me.
right.
And so enlightening for me as a military kid to have a story like this, but also
Hmm.
enlightening for somebody who's not familiar with military kids, because
Hmm.
I think that a lot of our nation wants to support our military. They want to understand our military, but they don't have access to post. They
Hmm.
may not even be close to a military family in geographic location. And so that's part of why I added these extra pages at the end of the story. Again, one of those control things that I had as an author publisher to help educate and encourage critical thinking in some of the children after the story's been read.
Hmm.
So, it will kind of extend beyond the story and hopefully help with retention and critical thinking as well.
Yeah. And I've seen that you do like school visits and read your book. What do you feel like when you read your book to a school setting? How do you see them respond, and what kind of reaction are you getting when you go on those?
It really depends on the kind of school. So I've done school visits with very heavily military
Hmm.
populations. And then I've done school visits with kids who are very unfamiliar with
Hmm.
military lifestyle. And both crowds are different. The kids who are military backgrounds, a lot of them are very excited because they're like, oh yeah, my dad did that, or we're an airborne family, or we've seen them do that, or whatever. So that's this reflection of themselves in the literature. And there's this excitement that like, oh, wow, there's finally a book where I can see myself in
Hmm.
this story. But then the ones who are totally unfamiliar, they're like just, what's a good word? They're kind of mesmerized by this whole nother lifestyle that's so completely different. And so I ask questions like, what do you think it would feel like to see your mom or dad jump out of an airplane for their
Hmm.
job? And getting them to kind of internalize and which will also help promote like empathy for military families and children to see this thing that's so very different, but then also shedding a positive light on these experiences so that hopefully it can garner, like I said, patriotism and support of our military and their service members. So, yeah, I mean, both
Hmm.
scenarios have been very positive as far as the feedback from the kids. And I probably love doing author visits more than anything else
Hmm.
because I, I have a hard time talking to adults, but I love talking to kids and seeing them get excited. And I even teach them a little airborne cadence. So we get up and we're marching and
Oh,
doing
cute.
all of these things. So it's just a blast. And I love that I've been able to kind of pour my teacher heart into the author visits, but the story itself
Yeah.
as well.
When you were talking, I was envisioning like the pages in your like the when you turn the page where the kids go and they're waiting, and then all of a sudden like the image of the little specks in the sky and it starts, and like you said, a kid who doesn't have any military experience, like you're like, whoa, what is this? Like what is happening? Yeah, that's exactly like
Yeah.
the pages.
Yeah. And I've found that with the cover itself, people are like, what on earth? Why are these kids jumping, like running around in the middle of all of these men in the sky?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you need to read the story. It's really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Welcome to Make Mementos, where we connect families through the power of storytelling for generations to come. Narrate your own copy of The Peppered Sky by Sarah Doran on MakeMementos.com. Now let's get back to the video.
When you're reading books to your kids, like what do you look for in a story? What do you think makes a good read aloud?
Oh, okay. So as a parent, I absolutely love reading stories that are written in rhyme and rhythm. I have a music background too, and so they feel very sing-songy, and it's like, oh, this is a lot more interesting than just reading a regular story. But I look for education. I look for positive messages. I look for values that align with our family's values. And all of those things I've tried to put into my stories to help the parents also fall in love with these stories.
Mhm. Well, and then I imagine, do you have any tips for moms that want to get more reading time in, and, how can they fit reading more to their kids? Something a priority with all of us that we want to read more to our kids. Like, how do you squeeze that in a busy life?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. So something that we started doing when we had our children was, I would call it the three Bs. It was bath, bottle, and books, and it was all at bedtime.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would get their bath, and then they'd have their bottle, and then we would read them a book. I mean, from infancy, and it's incredible the love of books that my kids have now because we've just made that a part of every night when we would tuck them in.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long. A lot of these books you can read in less than 5 minutes. I
Right.
mean, they even have those little 5-minute storybooks that you see
Mhm.
at Walmart and Target all the time. Stories do not take that long, and it's just a very worthwhile investment that you can have to foster your own relationship with your kids, but also instilling a love of reading and writing in them from such an early age. I've got a 10 and almost 8-year-old now, and they beg for reading time at night, so we'll
Mhm.
tuck them in, and I'm not necessarily sitting there reading to them every night anymore. However,
Mhm.
they're getting their own reading time, and I love seeing their love of literature now as a result of all of the time and effort we put in the early years.
Very cool. That's great. So I see you're wearing your purple up shirt, and this is Month of the Military Child. And then you recently wrote an article for us about resilience in military children. So what characteristics did you see in military children and military families that really makes them special?
So, military kids are, they don't have necessarily a lot of choice over the lifestyle that their family has chosen or volunteered for. So they are put in these positions of immense challenges, I would say, as far as moving every couple of years, to being separated from their parent for extended periods of time, moving schools, change of environments. I mean, there are so many big major life changes that these military kids endure, not just once or twice, but multiple times during their parents' service.
Mhm.
And resiliency, in my opinion, is not necessarily something that's developed when you take away those challenges. It's learning how to cope with these challenges in a very positive, healthy way.
Mhm.
And so I think military kids are placed in a unique position of opportunity to become very resilient. And if you read the article, you'll kind of learn more about some of those coping mechanisms that I think are very easy and natural to kind of foster. But I think that resiliency is a huge, huge characteristic of military children, but it's something that is learned and it's something that is nurtured as
Mhm.
they are growing through those experiences. But military kids, according to a couple of the studies that I was reading, they are capable of making harder decisions. They are typically, well, obviously resilient, and have very positive coping mechanisms to other kinds of life changes as well. And
Mhm.
so not only are they resilient kids, but they turn into resilient adults as well.
Mhm. Very important. So tell me a little bit, you have your second book that's coming out. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
Yeah, so Sleeping Giants is coming out later this year. Sleeping Giants is also written from the perspective of a military kid, but it really hones in on my experiences that I had as an aviation professional in the Army. So, in the story, the service member is a mom, which I'm really excited about
Mhm.
as a prior service female service member to be able to help represent women in the military. So mom and Finn is the little boy, and they go to the hangar for something very special that's happening at the hangar. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I want people to read the story. But while they're waiting for that special event to occur, Finn is there with the three different Army helicopters, the Chinook, the Apache, and the Black Hawk. And he kind of goes into his pretend world and completes missions on each of the helicopters. And so it's very imaginative, it's very fun, but it's written in the same format as the Peppered Sky. So it has the same sing-songy rhyme and rhythm. It has the same educational activities in the back of the story to help extend. And I think that people are just really going to fall in love with this story.
Very cool. So tell us, where can people find you on social, on your website, and find out more about your books?
So my website is author Sarah Doran, Sarah with an H. And you can find links to all of my books on there. You can find information about how to pre-order Sleeping Giants, which is only available through the end of this month, the month of April. And I have social media handles on Instagram and Facebook, author Sarah Doran. Just look me up and you'll find me. And I would love to connect with you and talk with you more about these stories.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about the work that Make Mementos is doing and excited that I get to be a part of it.